Robbie Buck with you this morning on Life Matters, in the chair just for another couple of days. And then, of course, on Monday, your regular presenter, Natasha Mitchell, will be back, refreshed and revitalised, no doubt. Did you catch our story a couple of weeks ago, though, where we talked about how much plastic is being made, used and discarded? It doesn't just end up in landfill, of course, but also in our oceans, which is a pretty big concern. Well, it got us thinking about how you could avoid using so much plastic in your life if you were worried about its effects. Maybe you already try by bringing enviro-friendly bags to the shops. Perhaps you recycle as much of your plastic as you possibly can. Well, our next guest has gone one big step further. Gina Prendergast decided to go a whole year without buying or using any new plastic at all. That means every bit of food, every cleaning product packaged in plastic was struck off her shopping list, a rule that you could imagine made doing the groceries a whole lot harder. To find out just how difficult the challenge was and how she went, we're joined by Gina now. Good morning and welcome to Life Matters, Gina.
Good morning.
So the big question is, why did you decide to go down this path a whole year? It's a fairly challenging task.
Well, it is a really challenging task. Back in 2010, I was just browsing on Facebook and a little 3-minute documentary appeared, and it was on plastic pollution, and I watched it. It actually moved me to tears, which doesn't often happen, and it was highlighting the impacts of plastic pollution in our oceans, also the health impacts on humans as well. And that sort of played on my mind for a while. Then I went along to the Environmental Film Festival in Melbourne, saw a few more documentaries on a variety of environmental topics. And the common theme was plastic pollution and the devastation it's causing and how widespread it is. I really felt then that I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. And I remembered the wise words of Gandhi, who said, "Be the change you want to see." So I thought, well, okay, if that's what it's going to take, I need to understand, is it even possible to live a modern life without plastic? And that's why I decided to do a whole year without any new virgin plastic.
So what were the rules that you set for yourself? What was the plan that you had?
Sure. So there's 3 basic rules. The first one, not to buy any new or virgin plastic. Now, the second rule was, if I really needed a plastic item and I couldn't find a plastic-free alternative to it, then I could purchase second-hand plastic, or I could borrow the item from somebody else. Thirdly, if I did accumulate any new plastic, for example, if an envelope arrived in the mail and it had a plastic window on it, I needed to keep all that plastic to understand what is my plastic footprint over the year, so I could understand what percentage I am accumulating over the year compared to the average Australian.
So you went as far as the little plastic window in envelopes?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes. Yep.
How did it play out for you? You had your ground rules, you had your plan set. From day one, how did your life change?
Well, it didn't. I have to admit, it didn't change dramatically instantly. But over time, I was really surprised and sometimes even shocked at how I would react when I finally had to give up a plastic item I was really used to. So in the beginning, shopping for plastic-free foods, that wasn't too hard. I just had to find, different stores, perhaps go to farmers markets rather than supermarkets, health food stores where I could buy bulk bin items and, fill up, existing jars or paper bags that way to get food. But it was little things like I remember the second month into it, I was at work and I had a ladder in my stockings and my colleague said to me, "Oh, you can't replace that, that's nylon." And for me, I hadn't even realised that, nylon is plastic, therefore I can't wear stockings or replace them. And 6 months into it too, I ran out of mascara and I hadn't realised that I had a real kind of emotional attachment to putting on mascara every day until I actually ran out.
So has mascara got a lot of plastic in it, or was it the bottle?
It's the bottle that it comes in, the packaging that it comes in.
This raises the fundamental point, though, doesn't it? I mean, plastic was and still is in lots of ways the wonder material of the 20th century that revolutionised our lives in so many different ways. And in the process, it made things a lot cheaper. When you're talking about going to farmers markets, when you're talking about using plastic alternatives, a lot of them are more expensive, aren't they?
Well, they are. I think we talk about expense a lot, or I get asked that question a lot. Is it a lot more expensive living plastic free? I've sort of got to that point in my life where I'm really quite sick and tired of buying products only to have them break in 2 or 3 years' time and then having to replace them again. And I start to wonder that with all our genius inventions, why we can't make items that do last longer. I find a lot of things made from plastic do end up cracking or scratching or breaking, within a couple of years' time. And that material, plastic, is a good material to use when you want it to last decades or even hundreds of years because it doesn't break down. And it's meant to be used in things that are long term, not just sort of single-use disposable items. And when it comes down to the expense, because on our challenge we weren't buying any new plastic, it actually meant that we were purchasing a lot less. So right down to the point that if I was shopping, clothes shopping for example, even if I found a plastic-free clothing item, say a cotton shirt, if it had a plastic little price tag on it, I had to walk away from it and not buy it. So in the end, I actually, purchased less, which actually did save us money. And in the long term, when we did buy products, say if we're talking about ice cube trays, spending, say, $40 on a stainless steel ice cube tray, that will probably last for decades, rather than a plastic ice cube tray, which may, over 2 to 5 years, perhaps crack over time.
What about electrical goods? They tend to be pretty much all using plastic elements in their makeup. How did you go about replacing or buying any electronic goods?
That's a really tough one. We had to, first of all, when repairing the item is the most ideal thing, except with our plastic age that we now live in, because it is often deemed cheaper to just buy a brand new item rather than repairing something like a toaster or a refrigerator, the actual occupation of a repairman seems to have disappeared. So it's quite hard to find someone that does know how to repair things really well. So when we had to purchase something, so we did purchase a toaster, we looked around and tried to find a brand that was mainly non-plastic. So there may be some plastic components, but mostly made out of metal or other components. So we would just try and go with the least plastic option.
I'm speaking with Gina Prendergast this morning here on Life Matters, who set herself the challenging task of living a whole year without buying any new plastic at all. When we say it was you, it wasn't just you by yourself, though, was it? You set yourself this task, but you had a partner involved in this. How did he respond to that?
Yeah, well, our whole family did. My partner was very open to it. He didn't have a lot of awareness before we started about the issue of plastic pollution or even general environmental issues, but he was very open to it. And with a bit of education, he really got into it and really, was very supportive of it. He did, however, mention I was newly pregnant at the time of starting the first year of living plastic-free. He did suggest that maybe I shouldn't start such a challenge with also the challenge of having our first baby. But that didn't deter me. I really wanted to do that.
Well, let's talk about that because having a child, sometimes lofty ideals tend to be diluted somewhat when it comes to the needs of the child. How did that impact affect your quest?
Well, I think because when you've got a baby, your time is sucked up in looking after the baby. And when you live plastic-free, you do have to think in advance of purchasing a product. So sometimes it can take us 2 or 3 weeks to actually find a product that we want that is plastic-free, as opposed to if you want a product, just pop down to the shop and purchase it, if you're not living plastic-free. So it takes more time to source the products that we wanted. And so that was quite a challenge, juggling the time of having a newborn as well as the time of living plastic-free. But some ideals, I have to admit, were thrown out the window. I remember thinking, what am I going to do if I need a dummy for the baby? I remember people saying, your baby doesn't need to have a dummy. And I thought, okay, well, I'll try that approach. 6 weeks into it, though, and after 3 weeks of having a screaming colicky baby, I absolutely just lost it one night. And I said to my partner, you just have to go out to the local chemist, supermarket, whatever is open, late at night and just try and find a dummy and see if it works.
I don't think anybody would blame you for that.
No.
There aren't too many wooden dummies that work, are there?
No, that's right. And there are times like that, just like the dummy thing. And on that occasion, I was very grateful. It actually stopped the crying of my child and soothed her. And so, I have to admit that in times, plastic does have its place.
Yeah. That said, how did family and friends and extended family respond to this particular quest of yours, particularly when it came to presents for the baby, for example?
It was really, really mixed. I have to say that it was different depending on which side of the family it came from, whether it was my family or the in-laws. My family, I think, know that I'm one of those people that I enjoy taking on environmental challenges. They sort of have understood me over a number of years, and when I did this, they actually quite enjoyed the challenge, and I received parcels from overseas that were wrapped in brown paper and string, and it still got to me, and I was amazed. I was like, wow. And they really enjoyed that whole process of actually buying plastic-free gifts for the children. On my in-laws' side, because the environmental awareness is a little bit less developed on that side, they still had a real challenge about understanding what can they purchase that's not plastic, because it's not something they had explored before. And so we did actually accumulate quite a bit of plastic through those gifts, coming through to the children that way.
And you had a plan of what to do with it if you did receive so-called virgin plastic. You had a contingency plan for it, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Well, we didn't want any new plastic that we did accumulate during our challenge to go into the waste stream. That was a really big thing for me. And I thought, well, what can I do with it? Recycling is an option, and I really encourage people to recycle, but it is very energy intensive and often isn't very economically viable either. So I thought, what can I do with it? I'll make art or a sculpture.
Now, there's an irony here that your art is made of plastic.
Yeah, I know.
So what have you ended up with?
Well, it's still actually in progress. I've actually had 2 children in 2 years, so I'm very busy with that. But the art is a work in progress, and I'm trying to depict a pregnant woman, like a sculpture made from the plastic.
Are your children old enough to understand, because you've extended this project and certainly the effects of this continue on in your day-to-day life even after the year had expired. Mm-hmm. Do your children, how do they respond to the idea that mum's a little bit unlike some of the other mothers that they know?
Well, my 1-year-old and my 6-month-old, they're not quite
old
understanding
enough,
of that, but I do have a 7-year-old stepson who lives with us full-time, and he really, children are amazing, because I've spoken to school groups as well. And they're amazing. Once you educate them on plastic and what it's doing, they're really on board to use less plastic. And my stepson's very much that way. I mean, he goes off to school with his stainless steel lunch container and his reusable water bottle. And his lunch never contains, plastic wrapping or waste. He's more than fine with it, and he really does identify now, like, oh, that's plastic, we shouldn't buy that. And when we go to birthday parties of his friends, we spend a bit of time trying to find a plastic-free alternative that his friends would still enjoy and really get a lot of fun and value out of. And they enjoy that process.
Gina, the big argument that comes up with any of these proposals is that the alternative isn't necessarily, in the complex scheme of things, going to be more environmentally friendly. I mean, it may be using more resources. The steel option might have other side effects that haven't been thought of. I mean, is that also a tricky territory to navigate for somebody who's trying in a concerned way, trying to do the right thing?
Yes, it is. And I've really thought about this. I used to work as an environmental analyst as well and really look at the life cycles of various different products. And yes, alternatives doesn't actually mean that they're any better for our health or better for pollution, like reduced pollution, or maybe there's human rights issues and other ethical issues involved in all sorts of products. It's a very rare company that gets it right across the whole board of ethical problems that we are facing in our complex sort of world today. But what I can say is that if you're choosing, say, a plastic product over a wooden product or a metal product, the odds are it's more likely to be more hazardous, more destructive in some way or another, because if you think about the whole life cycle of plastic, most of it is petroleum based. So you've got the oil, rigging. Sometimes there's oil disasters, oil spills. You've also got to remember about plastic factories. There are areas of the world where people live near plastic factories and they've got nicknames like cancer alleys. The diseases that the people face living near those plastic factories are horrendous. And then you've got just the everyday plastic pollution, where you've got over 1 million seabirds dying every year, 100,000 marine animals found, just the ones that are found die. So I think there's just a lot of issues with plastic, a lot more issues with plastic than perhaps other materials that do over time naturally biodegrade. And other materials aren't so easily mistaken as food. And what I mean by that is, say, plastic bags that are in the ocean. Turtles actually look at the plastic bags floating in the ocean and go, oh, that looks like my food source, like jellyfish.
Yeah.
That's not quite the same for other products.
All right, Gina. Well, look, thanks so much for sharing your story with us today on Life Matters. It's been great to chat.
Thank you.
That was environmentalist, finance worker and mother Gina Prendergast talking about trying to live virtually plastic-free. Have you tried to reduce the amount of plastic you use in your life? If you have, I don't know if you've gone as far as Gina, but perhaps you'd like to share your stories as well. Of course, you can get in touch with us here on Life Matters. The listener line, 028 333 1430, or of course contact us via our website at abc.net.au/Radio National. Just look for Life Matters, or via the Facebook page as well. Coming up next, we continue to celebrate